Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. You're ready for this one. We're going to get into Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Oh, this one's gonna be good.
I know, right? It's one of those books with a super catchy title, but it's actually a lot deeper than you might think at first.
Yeah, it's not about just being like whatever to everything.
Right, it's more about figuring out what really matters
Totally.
and then really focusing your energy on those things.
Choosing your battles, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like how he starts off the book with that story about Charles Bukowski.
Oh, yeah, I love that story.
Right. I mean, here's a poet known for being, well,
Not exactly a ray of sunshine.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the guy was successful,
Very successful.
and you know it's on his tombstone.
Don't try.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of brilliant, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how much pressure do we all feel these days
Oh my gosh.
to
that's
be
what I-
perfect, to never mess up? Yeah.
Never show any weakness.
Right, like we always have to be on.
It's exhausting.
It really is, and it leaves us with zero energy for what actually matters.
Yeah, I totally feel that pressure.
We all do, I think.
So what do we do?
Well, Manson calls it the, what is it, the feedback loop from hell.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's when you're, like, anxious about being anxious
Oh my God.
or
Dude,
stressed about being stressed. It just keeps feeding itself.
it's like a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And the more we resist those feelings, the worse it gets.
So what are we supposed to do? Just let those bad feelings take over?
Not exactly. It's more about acknowledging them.
Oh.
Like, hey, I'm feeling anxious right now. Just notice it without judging yourself.
That sounds tough.
It is. It's so counterintuitive because we're so used to... Yeah.
Fighting those negative feelings. Right?
Exactly. But what if those feelings are trying to tell us something?
What do you mean?
Like maybe they're a sign that something needs to change.
Oh, I see. That maybe we're focusing on the wrong things or our expectations are just way too high.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. So how do we figure out what the right things to focus on are?
Manson has this great story about an older lady
Okay.
who totally freaks out at the grocery store over coupons.
Over coupons?
Yeah, like full-on meltdown.
Wow.
But think about it.
Okay.
Those coupons probably meant everything to her.
Why?
Maybe because in a life where she felt like she had no control, those coupons gave her some power.
I guess that makes sense.
So Manson's saying that what matters most is figuring out what you value,
Okay.
because your values will guide you toward the struggles that are actually worth it.
So it's all about priorities.
Exactly. You only have so much time and energy, right? You can't care deeply about everything.
Is that saying you got to pick your battles?
Yes, exactly. It's about recognizing that our time and energy are like precious resources.
Okay.
We can't just spread them around willy-nilly.
So how do we figure out, like, which battles are worth fighting?
You got to ask yourself, what truly aligns with what I believe in? And what problems, even if they're hard, will actually make my life better?
That's deep.
And that's where the real growth starts to happen.
So once we've picked our struggles, like, what's next? Do we just, like, accept them and live with them forever?
Well, that's where this whole idea of happiness being about solving problems comes in.
Okay.
He's got this funny analogy in the book
Yeah.
about, being on an acid trip and there's this house, but the closer he gets, the further away it seems.
Whoa, that's trippy.
Right. But it's like how happiness isn't some finish line you cross.
Yeah.
It's more about, constantly engaging with and working through challenges.
So we solve one problem, and there's always another one waiting.
Pretty much. But it's about choosing the right problems to grapple with.
Okay, so how do we make sure we're not just picking problems that make us miserable?
Well, Manson talks about choosing good problems.
Good problems.
Yeah, the kind that push you to grow and line up with what you care about.
I see.
Think about it. Would you rather deal with the challenges of raising a family
Okay.
or the challenge of never letting anyone get close because you're scared of getting hurt?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Right. One's tough but can lead to something amazing. The other just keeps you stuck.
So maybe it's not about avoiding problems altogether, but about being choosy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about picking the problems that will help you become the best version of yourself.
And embracing that process, knowing that even the tough stuff can teach us something.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Maybe not exactly like that,
Fair enough.
but facing those challenges, that's what builds resilience,
Makes
And it
sense.
helps us understand ourselves better.
Yeah, I like that. So is that where the not giving a feck part comes in?
Maybe, yeah.
Like not giving a feck about the stuff that holds us back from dealing with these,
Good problems.
yes, good problems.
Totally. It's about letting go of the fear of failure, you know, the need to impress everyone.
And the pressure to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. It's giving ourselves permission to be in the moment, even the messy parts.
That sounds great,
It is.
but also a little scary.
It can be, yeah.
So how do we even start doing that?
That's a great question, and it all starts with asking yourself one simple thing.
Yeah.
What would you do if you just knew you couldn't fail?
Whoa.
Think about that.
Yeah, that is a powerful question.
Right.
It kind of makes you realize how much we let fear, hold
Mhm.
us back.
Totally. It's like we get so caught up in everything that could go wrong
Yeah.
that we forget to think about.
What could go right?
Exactly.
What if it actually works out?
What if it's amazing?
And, even if it doesn't.
Right. Even if it
I
does,
mean, even if we mess up.
like, which we will.
Yeah.
Those mess ups, those are like
Yeah.
golden learning opportunities.
It's so true. Like, Manson talks about
Mm-hmm.
graduating college during the recession.
Oh, yeah.
Basically starting adulthood. Like,
As a failure.
yeah. Everyone's like, oh, you poor thing.
Right. Exactly.
But he says it actually helped him in the long run.
Of course it did.
Like, how?
It taught him to be resilient, to
Well,
adapt,
Okay.
and how important it is to make your own path.
So it's like those setbacks,
Mm.
sometimes they teach us way more
Way more than success.
than like just sailing through.
Totally.
Okay, so it's about like reframing failure,
Yeah.
seeing it as like a stepping stone,
Not a roadblock.
not the end of the world.
Right. Exactly.
But how do we actually do that?
Because
Because it's easy to say,
it's easy to say.
but when it happens,
Yeah.
it feels really bad.
Failure can be brutal. It can be really discouraging.
So how do we shift that?
It's all about perspective.
Okay.
Instead of asking, like, why me? Why did this happen?
Yeah.
You got to ask, okay, what can I learn from this?
Oh,
It's about focusing on the process,
Mm-hmm.
the effort, the growth,
Mm-hmm.
not just the outcome.
Okay, I like that. That actually reminds me of something else.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
He talks about the difference between action and motivation.
Yeah, the whole, like,
Yeah, that we wait to be motivated.
to take action.
Yeah, but what if it's the other way around?
Right.
What if action leads to motivation?
He calls them,
What does he call them?
like, VCR questions.
VCR questions.
Yeah, you're the ones you just keep replaying in your head.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do I get in shape? How do I start a business?
Oh, constantly.
And you just overthink it so much, you end up in this analysis paralysis,
Yeah.
You never actually do anything.
Oh, all the time. I do that with like everything,
Yeah.
like researching the perfect workout plan.
Yes.
Or like the business strategy, but then
Before
never,
taking that first step.
never starting.
Right. And
Yeah.
Manson's point is that action, even if it's messy,
Yeah.
even if it's not perfect,
Yeah.
that creates its own momentum.
Ah.
It gives you feedback, insights, and even, motivation that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Okay, so it's kind of like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
Sometimes the hardest part is just starting.
It really is.
Okay, so we talked about struggles, about values, about failure, about taking action.
Lots of good stuff.
But there's this other big idea that seems kind of, I don't know,
What is it?
like counterintuitive.
Okay.
That commitment can actually be freeing.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like commitment and like not giving a feck.
Should be opposites.
Yeah,
Right.
totally different things.
But what Manson's saying is that choosing to commit,
Okay.
whether it's to a relationship, to a career, to a goal,
Yeah.
that can actually free us from, like, all the options
Oh, interesting.
and the pressure to always be chasing something new.
So it's like making a decision and sticking to it.
Yes. Because when you're constantly chasing novelty, you never really get that deep satisfaction.
Yeah.
And
he uses his own life as an example, right?
Yeah, he does. He talks about
Traveling the world.
how he traveled all over
Yeah.
for years and years.
Yeah.
And then finally chose to, like, settle down.
Yeah, and focus on his writing.
Exactly.
He found that, like, depth of experience.
The kind that comes from, like, really committing
Yeah.
was more fulfilling than just always chasing the next thing.
It's kind of like the difference between being a tourist and a local, right?
Ooh, I like that.
The tourist might see more sights,
Right?
but the local, like, truly knows the place.
Totally. They
Yeah.
get it on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And Manson also connects this to You familiar with the paradox of choice?
Kind of, remind me.
It's this idea that having too many options
Oh, yeah, yeah.
can actually make us anxious.
Totally.
Like, think about it.
Okay.
Have you ever felt, like, overwhelmed by all the choices?
Oh, every day.
Me too.
Streaming services, career paths, what to eat for dinner.
Right. Everything.
It's too much.
It's too much. So what Manson's saying is, by committing, we're actually freeing ourselves.
And that overwhelm.
Yes, from all that mental clutter.
Okay, that makes sense.
It lets us focus our energy on what really matters to us
Okay.
and to go deep in those areas. You know? It's about quality over quantity, depth over breadth.
Okay, but what about when you're stuck?
Stuck.
Yeah, like in a commitment
Oh, I see.
that's no longer working.
Right.
How do you know when it's time to like reassess or even walk away?
That's where that whole idea of taking responsibility comes in.
Okay.
Remember, Manson reminds us that we always have a choice.
Even when it feels like we don't.
Yes. Even when it feels impossible, we still have choices.
So like what can we do?
It might be having some hard conversations,
Okay.
setting some boundaries,
Yeah.
or even, making a tough decision to move on. But the bottom line is, we have the power to shape our own lives.
Even within those commitments.
Within the framework, exactly.
Okay, so maybe that's the real like not giving effect part.
I think you're onto something.
Not giving effect about the things that are keeping us
Trapped.
Yeah, trapped.
In a life that's not true to ourselves.
Yes.
It's about being honest,
Yeah.
with ourselves, about what we really need, our values,
Yeah.
what we want, and then, making choices that line up with those things.
Even if it means letting go of something that was once important.
That's the hardest part, but sometimes it's the most important part.
It's about growth and change.
Right, and recognizing that those are inevitable parts of life
And sometimes letting go
is the best thing we can do.
is the kindest thing.
For ourselves and for everyone around us.
So, we've been talking a lot about like personal stuff, but Manson also gets into some pretty like big philosophical stuff.
Oh, he does. Especially when he talks about death.
Yeah, that part was intense. It's
Oh.
like he's saying that acknowledging our own mortality instead of just avoiding it.
That can actually be, like, really freeing.
That doesn't seem right.
I know, right?
It feels like it should be the opposite.
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, we usually try to avoid thinking about death,
Because it's scary.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Nobody wants to think about it.
Right, but Manson's saying that confronting that fear,
Instead of just like
running away from it,
pushing it down.
exactly, that can actually help us appreciate life more
Really?
and make choices that really mean something.
Okay, so it's like because we know our time is limited, we'll actually make the most of it.
We'll focus on what matters.
It reminds me of that quote,
Oh, which one?
like life is too short to bill.
Ooh, I love that one.
And you can fill in the blank with anything that's holding you back
Yes.
from really living,
Exactly.
And Manson, he ties this into the work of Ernest Becker,
Ernest Becker, yeah.
who talked about death terror,
Ooh, yeah, death terror.
which is like that deep down anxiety
we all have
about dying.
about our own mortality, yeah.
And he says that anxiety
Often makes us do things
that aren't
healthy,
Yeah.
that are driven by, like, this need to,
Leave a mark.
to leave a mark, to transcend our own, like, limited time.
So it's like having kids, building businesses.
Writing a book.
Yeah, writing a book.
Anything to, like, feel like we're going to live on.
Like creating a legacy.
Exactly. And those things can be great,
Mm-hmm.
but they can also be, like, unhealthy obsessions.
Oh, if you're not careful.
Right, if you're not careful.
So Manson's saying, like, find a balance.
Yes.
Pursue your goals, but don't get caught up in, like, the need to
Be remembered.
Be remembered.
Or to, like, get everyone's approval.
Yeah, it's not about external validation.
Exactly. It's about what feels meaningful to you.
Okay, so it's not about denying death,
No.
but about, like, using it.
As motivation.
Yeah, to live a more intentional life.
More fulfilling life.
Okay.
A life that's true to yourself.
Wow, that is pretty profound.
Wow.
It makes you really think about, like, am I living my life in a way that, like, honors the fact that
Our time is limited.
then I'm only here for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be about, like,
Right.
huge dramatic changes.
Okay.
It can be about appreciating the little things.
Everyday stuff.
Yeah, expressing gratitude.
For the people in our lives.
And choosing to focus on the good stuff.
Even when things are hard.
Even when things are really tough.
So it's like finding those little moments of beauty.
Yeah, those little miracles.
But in the everyday.
Absolutely.
And remembering that life is a gift.
Life is a gift.
Even with all the
imperfections.
Yeah, the ups and downs.
It's still a gift.
All right, so we're back and still digging into the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Still going strong.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
Choosing our struggles, finding meaning, even facing,
death, the big one.
Yeah, who knew a book with this title would get so deep?
It's kind of sneaky that way, isn't it?
Totally. But one thing that keeps coming up for me is that Manson, he's not actually saying to be apathetic.
Right, not at all.
He's not saying just, not care about anything.
It's almost the opposite, really.
Oh, how so?
He's saying to be really engaged with life.
Okay.
But, on your own terms.
So it's about choosing what to care about.
Yes. And being really intentional about it.
Okay, but how do we do that? In a world that's always telling us what to care about.
It's tough, right?
Yeah, Instagram's telling me to care about one thing.
The news is telling you to care about another.
Exactly. How do we figure out what really matters to us?
Well, Manson says instead of looking for meaning outside ourselves, we got to create it from within.
From within.
Based on our own values, our own experiences.
I see.
He even talks about this friend of his, Josh.
Yeah.
Who died really unexpectedly.
That's so sad.
It was. And it made Manson, reevaluate everything.
Really question what matters.
Totally. When you're faced with that kind of loss.
Yeah.
It makes you think, what am I doing with my life?
What am I spending my time on?
Exactly.
So knowing our time is limited, how do we make sure we're, not wasting it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
But Manson says our legacy, it's not about, being famous or having a ton of money.
So it's not about, leaving your mark on history?
Not necessarily. It's more about...
What is it about?
The choices we make every day,
Okay.
The relationships we build, the impact we have on the people around us.
So it's about making a difference?
Yeah, even in small ways.
Okay. And he talks about ripples, right?
Mm-hmm. How our actions, even the tiny ones, can have these big effects.
Like a ripple effect?
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about, being extraordinary.
Right.
It's about the little things.
It's about living a life that's true to you.
So is that what he means by not giving a feck?
I think so, yeah.
Not giving a feck about what society says is important, and instead, focusing on what matters to us.
Exactly. Defining success for ourselves.
Not letting other people define it for us.
Exactly.
It's about finding what resonates with our souls.
Even if it's not, glamorous or Instagram worthy.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of something else he said.
Oh, what's that?
About how we don't have to be extraordinary to live a meaningful life.
That's a good one.
That there's even, beauty in being ordinary.
Oh, I love that.
And he uses Picasso as an example.
Oh, yeah, Picasso, even when he was older.
Still creating.
Not for fame, not for money.
Just for the love of it.
For the pure joy of creating.
So it's meaning it doesn't come from outside. We create it.
We create it from within.
Through our actions.
Our choices, yeah.
Our perspective.
And it's about finding those moments of joy, right?
Yeah, and the everyday stuff.
In those little acts of kindness, in the connections we make.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's feeling, lost, or struggling to find their purpose.
It happens to the best of us.
Remember that you have the power to create your own meaning.
You do.
It doesn't have to be this big, complicated thing.
It's about starting small.
Yeah, taking little steps.
Choosing what matters to you.
Embracing the struggles and taking action.
Action is key.
Even if it's just one tiny step at a time.
One step at a time.
But you don't need anyone's permission, right? To live a life that feels meaningful to you.
You get to decide what success looks like.
It's about showing up authentically.
Imperfectly.
Being yourself.
And making your own little dent in the universe.
I love that. Well, I think that just about wraps up our deep dive.
Into The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
By Mark Manson.
What a ride.
We hope you enjoyed it.
And that it gave you some things to think about.
Maybe even inspired you to take a closer look at your own life.
What are you giving a fuck about?
And what are you ready to let go of?
Those are the big questions.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.